When the government announced it would abolish the Section 21 ground for possession, it sent shockwaves through the private rented sector, shivers down the spines of landlords. A real question to ask, however, is this all just a misconception as to the impact that the abolishment of the Section 21 notice will have on landlords? The Section 21 notice is a no-fault ground for possession applying to assured short-hold tenancy agreements. It allows a landlord to get their property back at the end of the term of a tenancy without having to give any reason as to why. The landlord simply must ensure the notice they serve is a valid Section 21 notice, and they can then get their property back. Now, prior to the Housing Act 1988 coming into force, which created the assured short-hold tenancy and the Section 21 ground to terminate that type of tenancy, there were no assured short-hold tenancies. There were only regulated or protected tenancies, and those were tenancies for life. So if you had a residential property that you had let out, you would have a protected or regulated tenancy, and it would have been extremely difficult to get the property back. And that is precisely why back then there was a homeless problem, yet there was a lot of properties that were empty. Nobody wanted to invest in the private rented sector and let out their properties because they knew it would be very difficult to get that property back if they needed it. Now, in recognising that problem, the government enacted the Housing Act 1988 to create the assured tenancy regime, of which an AST, assured short-hold tenancy, is a type of, and they created the mechanism to terminate that type of tenancy without having to give a reason. And that is, of course, the no-fault ground for possession, Section 21. And that significantly drove up investment in the sector, and it solved the homeless problem. However, that is now all set to change. The government has confirmed it will abolish the Section 21 ground for possession, and as a result, landlords have been panicking. Some landlords have even been selling up their portfolio and moving out of the sector completely. But what may be being overlooked here by those landlords is that the proposal is not to simply abolish the Section 21 ground for possession and that be the end of it. The proposals under the Renters' Rights Bill do include two new fault grounds for possession. Specifically, if a landlord needs to sell their property, they can serve notice on the tenant and they can get their property back. Or if the landlord or a member of the landlord's family needs the property to move back into themselves, they can serve notice and they can get their property back. Now, in either of those scenarios, a landlord would typically use a Section 21 notice to get their property back. So if the Section 21 is being removed but replaced by those new grounds for possession, allowing a landlord to get their property back on a no-fault basis because they want the property back to move into or they need to sell it, what is really changing? Well, what is changing is legal strategy. The reality is that the Section 21 ground is not only used by landlords when they need to sell the property or to move back into it. It's used as a very simple but effective strategy to get the landlord's property back. Even though there perhaps is a reason, the landlord could use the Section 21 notice and not have to confirm the reason and get their property back. Putting that into perspective, let's say a landlord has a tenant who's committing unlawful activity in the property, or they're conducting antisocial behaviour. Now, that ground for possession, which is ground 14, that's a discretionary ground for possession. The landlord may prefer to serve a Section 21 notice and have that security that the court must make a possession order, as opposed to asking the court to make a possession order on a discretionary ground and risk the court refusing to make a possession order. It could also be that the landlord has breached their own obligations. Perhaps the tenant is in rent arrears, and rather than the landlord seek to terminate the tenancy based on unpaid rent and risk a defence and counterclaim against them by the tenant, they can avoid all of that contention by using a Section 21 notice. Now, those are of course just very brief, simple examples as to how a landlord might use a Section 21 notice as a very simple yet effective strategy to get their property back when there is a reason they want the property back, but they're going to use the Section 21 notice to get around a risk of a defence or counterclaim. So that's the reality here. What's changing is legal strategy. And landlords should stay educated on the proposed changes, and they should certainly ensure that they educate themselves once the changes do come into force. Landlord Advice UK will continue to publish updates on both YouTube, social media platforms, and our website at landlordadvice.co.uk.